Yes, but it might not be for you. I'm not going to be claiming that I'm a professional, but I have been using the Sony A7 III since 2018. So the things that I'm going to be sharing with you is from a practicality point of view based on the number of years that I've been using it. You see, when the A7 III first came out, it completely revolutionized the mirrorless camera game. It came at an affordable price point such that you didn't need to sell 5 kidneys to be able to afford it. And it came with features way ahead of the competition at the time. So for the most part, I've been using this camera for photography. In terms of image quality, there's no doubt about it. It's really incredible, and it's the main reason why even after 7 years, I've been able to avoid having gear acquisition syndrome in terms of camera bodies on the later releases. Though I'm gonna be honest, if Sony announces an A7 V soon, then I might get tempted. So the A7 III comes with a 24 megapixel full frame sensor, so that means that in terms of dynamic range and noise performance, it's going to work really well. And as a testament to this, I've been able to use this in extreme low light situations. So for like my astrophotography or low light street photography, and I've taken photos way above, let's say, ISO 12800, and the noise performance didn't bother me at all. And to add to that, nowadays we have AI denoise in post-processing, making noise performance less of an issue. And we also live in a weird time where people expect perfect noise performance from cameras only to add grain back in post-processing. Some may argue that 24 megapixels may not be enough in today's standards because more recent releases have, let's say, 33, 42, 69 megapixels. But if you're like me, whose photos will probably never end up in billboards, then 24 megapixels is definitely enough, even if you heavily crop your photos for, let's say, social media. And a bonus that can come out of this is that you're not going to be burning through SD cards very often because file sizes are manageable. Autofocus on this camera works great. It consistently nails the shot for me, but it does miss out on later upgrades in terms of autofocus system from Sony, which is very popular in terms of, let's say, wildlife photography. In terms of burst mode, it does shoot up to 10 frames per second, which is more than sufficient for me, but I don't know if you're shooting things that's very fast, like Usain Bolt. Is it still very fast? Some honorable mentions about this camera. My god, weather sealing and durability. If you look closely, I'm not the most careful person in terms of handling my gear, and my camera already looks like it's been through a bad breakup. All this to say that I've shot in quite challenging conditions, from very cold winters to very wet and wild waterfalls, spraying water all around my camera, and it's survived it all. The only real thing that irks me is that if you don't have the hot shoe cover on or something that protects the hot shoe, then if you spray some water on it, then it's going to consistently bombard you with error messages. That's quite annoying. So the A7 III also comes with 2 SD cards, so you know, like, who doesn't want their files to be safe and handy? And personally for me, I pre-programmed the camera to put videos in one SD card and the photos in another, so that it just really makes my editing life much faster in terms of managing the files. Battery life of this camera is a persistent beast and can keep going on and on in long sessions, and there were even times when I went on multi-day trips that not even once I charged the camera. Did I take a lot of photos on that trip? Well, the camera is great and all, but there are a number of things that quite annoy me, and the first one is going to be the menu system. You think it's going to be one of those things that you kind of get used to, but you really don't. But one way to work around it is that the camera does come with custom buttons and custom modes that you can pre-program to make things easier. And in the menu, you can also set up like a favorites page for those settings that you use on a more frequent basis, because let's be honest, we don't really navigate through and use the entire settings on a day-to-day basis. With that said, it's still going to be a pain to navigate. And the camera does use a tilt screen, which is not ideal for, let's say, vlogging or solo shooting because you don't have any friends. The phone connectivity of this camera to the Imaging Edge app on your phone is honestly quite shit, and I do use it from time to time whenever I do my solo filming and taking photos of myself, and then I can use that remote control function, but it's just extremely laggy for some reason and it disconnects a lot of times. And another thing, but I don't know if I'm just nitpicking, is that the maximum shutter speed that you can program is up to 30 seconds. You can take longer than that if you're using the bulb mode or have an intervalometer, but you know, newer releases of cameras already have that function. I mean, even my Ricoh GR3X has a built-in timer that you can set, let's say, 3 or 5 minutes long, and it's not going to be very often, but it does make me miss out a little bit on long exposure opportunities, or it's just extra steps to take photos like those. In terms of videos, I've only personally used it to have alternative B-rolls in my videos, and for the most part, I've been using the Sony a6400 for my vlogs. So to me, it's already fairly decent. It is 4K 24 frames per second capable, which is quite the norm nowadays in terms of videos. But if you want those very smooth, slow motion clips, then you have to drop down to full HD, which I don't know if it's a completely bad thing. I mean, full HD is still full HD, right? But I guess 4K nowadays is the norm. And in terms of image stabilization, it's quite outdated. I don't really use gimbals in my videos. I think they're pretty much overkill for my vlogs. So yeah, if you're doing some handheld footage, then the shake will still be quite noticeable, which isn't completely the worst because I did come from the a6400, which doesn't have IBIS. And yeah, in post-processing, the warp stabilizer in Premiere Pro, it usually handles it already. So in terms of color space, the Sony A7 III comes with 8-bit color versus the 10-bit color of newer camera models out there. And it kind of sounds too technical for me, but just try to imagine you're back in primary school taking an art class, and then you whip out a box of crayons of 8, and then everyone around you has a box of 64. So it might work well for basic coloring, but if you're like this kid who loves colors, then it might not be for you, especially if you're handling some high-end projects. But personally, no one's hired me for those. The Sony A7 III also comes with a 30-minute recording limit, which to me sounds a lot. But then if you're doing stuff like long interviews or podcasts, then that might be something for you to consider. I did see some videos that talk about some workaround by using an intervalometer, but it's just extra steps. And then others have claimed that there's overheating issues in Sony A7 III for extended periods of. So we've talked about all the core features of the Sony A7 III and all of that for a retail price of $1,800. And I've also seen some deals online that could go as low as maybe $1,300 to $1,600 US as well. So apart from the dedicated or specialized or professional grade work out there, then this camera definitely meets the requirements of the general photography population. So you can definitely save up a bit of money by holding out on the newer releases, which could cost nearly twice as much of this camera, and you can invest it more in terms of buying a much better lens or even going on a dedicated photography trip, which honestly those things are more exciting and will likely yield you with better photos to take home than an upgraded camera body. That said, when is the A7 IV coming out?